Pregnant wife walks in on husband, naming mistress's baby after theirs. But she discovered truth. Today's story brims with heartbreak, betrayal, and astonishing revelations. Brace yourselves for a tale where a pregnant wife stumbles upon her husband in the most devastating predicament imaginable. Yet, within this raw emotional battle, there lie secrets that go far deeper than any of them could guess. As twists unravel and tensions reach a breaking point, each character is forced to confront truths they never thought possible. Deception threatens to tear apart everything they hold dear, but what emerges from the ashes is a karmic reckoning none could have predicted. Prepare to be stunned and hold your breath as we embark on a nail-biting journey that defies all expectations. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press 0. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. Cassandra bit her lip as she closed the door to her suburban home, a place she'd once envisioned as a sanctuary brimming with laughter, the aroma of homemade meals, and cozy family nights. She was 7 months pregnant, expecting her first child with her husband, Thomas. From the outside, their life appeared pristine. He was a well-regarded corporate consultant. She, a dedicated volunteer at a local library. They had supportive parents, boisterous friends, and a future that seemed bright. Yet Cassandra had felt a sense of unease, a disquieting tension coiling in her stomach for weeks. Perhaps it was hormones, she told herself, or maybe it was something far more ominous. That afternoon, the first alarm had rung in her mind. Thomas had been spending longer hours at his office, missing family dinners and returning home with subdued energy. She reassured herself he was under pressure at work after all. The man was about to become a father. Stress was part of the territory, wasn't it? But just yesterday, she'd stumbled upon an unusual receipt in his car from a florist. She knew he'd never visited for her. Then, in the passenger seat, she found a half-empty pack of gum with lipstick smudged on the foil, colored in a shade she never wore. Trying to calm her nerves, she poured herself a glass of water and sank onto the couch. She forced her mind to rationalize. Maybe he picked it up for a co-worker. Maybe the florist was for a work event. Cassandra stared down at her swollen belly. She listened to her child's faint movement within her womb, a momentary comfort. It was then she resolved to uncover the truth before it devoured her. The next few days would redefine everything she thought she knew about her marriage. Little did she suspect just how devastating her discovery would be and how deep the tangled web of lies truly went. By the time Thursday rolled around, Cassandra felt her curiosity morph into a determined vigil. She decided to call Thomas's office phone at 1 in the afternoon, expecting him to pick up after a meeting. Strangely, the number went straight to voicemail, and an automated message coldly informed her that the mailbox was full. A pang of suspicion shot through her. Something was off. Determined, Cassandra used her web of connections to reach out to a friend who worked in a different department at the same company. A quick text exchange confirmed her worst fears. Thomas hadn't been at the office all day. The friend hadn't seen him for nearly a week, outside of the occasional glance during break times. He was certainly not buried in back-to-back meetings as he'd claimed. Alarm bells rattled in Cassandra's mind. Fueled by swirling emotions, love, fear, betrayal, she decided to do something she never imagined herself doing. She went on a stakeout. With her baby bump hidden beneath a loose sweater, she sat in the driver's seat of their second-hand sedan, heart pounding as she waited near Thomas's office parking lot. Just as she doubted whether she'd have the endurance to keep the surveillance going, she saw him emerge from the building's side entrance, wearing a broad smile and looking more invigorated than she had seen in weeks. The man she loved, and whose child she was carrying, climbed into a shiny black SUV. This vehicle wasn't his. Cassandra remembered that black SUV belonging to his longtime colleague, Jordan, but the tinted windows made it hard to see who was behind the wheel. She took a deep breath, turned the ignition, and followed from a careful distance. The chase had begun, and every fiber in her body warned her that what she found next would shatter her world. Navigating city streets with her heart hammering in her chest, Cassandra kept the SUV in her sights. Glimpses of Thomas laughing or talking animatedly in the passenger seat both disturbed and confused her. This man was someone she barely recognized, a stark contrast to the exhausted, listless spouse she'd encountered over dinner, night after night. Where had this vivacity come from, and who was fueling it? After 20 tense minutes, the SUV pulled up at a condominium complex near Riverside Park, an upscale neighborhood Cassandra had only driven by a handful of times. She watched as Thomas hopped out, peered up at the sleek building, and walked inside. The driver never emerged, leaving her unable to confirm the identity of whoever was behind the wheel. Still, the SUV's presence alone was suspicious enough. Cassandra parked on a side street, hands shaking on the wheel. Should she confront him now, storm into the lobby, demand an explanation? Every instinct called her to do so. Yet a greater fear held her in place, fear of learning the final, undeniable truth. She couldn't face it, at least, not yet. Her unborn child's gentle kick reminded her that this was no time to make rash decisions. She took a moment to breathe, to gather her courage. When Thomas eventually emerged nearly an hour later, he wore an oddly triumphant grin. Cassandra could feel her heart drop into the pit of her stomach. He looked too happy, glowing with an excitement she hadn't witnessed in quite some time. She ducked low, praying he wouldn't notice her. He returned to the SUV, and it disappeared onto the main road. Cassandra's mind reeled. She had no proof, no answers, just the adrenaline-charged certainty that whatever was unfolding in that riverside condominium was about to destroy her life. Disturbed by the scene she'd witnessed, Cassandra considered confronting Thomas the moment he arrived home that evening. The entire day had boiled her emotions to a simmering rage, but she forced herself to remain composed. For hours, she paced the living room, replaying the stakeout in her mind. Why would he lie about work? Who was the driver? And more importantly, what was that condominium? Questions pounded in her brain like a relentless drum. When Thomas finally walked in the door after sunset, he wore the same drained expression she had grown accustomed to. "Rough day," he sighed, setting his briefcase by the sofa. Cassandra swallowed hard, noting that he was now displaying the exhaustion that had been absent that afternoon. The inconsistency grated on her. Still, she held back, desperate for more evidence, before she made an accusation that could unravel their relationship permanently. That night, as Thomas showered and she prepared a simple dinner, Cassandra took a bold step. She rummaged through his phone, which he had carelessly left on the kitchen counter. Usually passcode locked. This time it flashed open, as if it had been waiting for her. Emails, text messages, social media, all seemed normal on the surface. But then she spotted a newly installed app for a ride-sharing service. Curiosity spiked. She tapped on it and discovered recent transactions, except none of them had been to his office. Instead, they were repeated trips to that high-end condominium address. It was impossible to ignore anymore. Her breath hitched. Panic rose in her throat, but she stayed quiet. Tonight wasn't the night for confrontation. Instead, she realized she needed a different approach. She had to see, with her own eyes, what was going on inside that lavish building near Riverside Park. Because if the truth was as awful as she suspected, she would need incontrovertible proof. The next day, Cassandra devised a plan. She reached out to her older cousin, Valerie, who was a former investigative journalist with a knack for digging up hidden facts. Valerie could be trusted to keep secrets and had an unflinching moral compass. When Cassandra confided her suspicions about Thomas's clandestine activity, Valerie's brow furrowed. "If he's hiding something," she said, "we'll uncover it tactfully." Valerie proposed that they stake out the condominium building together. As a pregnant woman, Cassandra was less mobile and needed an ally. So they hatched a scheme. Valerie would pose as a prospective buyer interested in a unit. Meanwhile, Cassandra would linger discreetly in the lobby, hoping to catch a glimpse of what Thomas was doing there. They even prepared a fabricated backstory: Valerie as a widow searching for a new place, Cassandra as her supportive relative. On a bright Saturday morning, they arrived at the property. The lobby gleamed with marble floors and a silver chandelier. A friendly receptionist greeted Valerie, who inquired about available units. Meanwhile, Cassandra pretended to admire the art on the walls, heart pounding with anticipation. She wasn't sure if Thomas would appear, but an electric current of dread and hope coursed through her as she scanned each face that passed. Valerie engaged in idle chatter with the receptionist, gleaning details about the building's residents. Cassandra hovered nearby, eavesdropping on any clues. Her heart nearly stopped when she heard the name Thomas Williams mentioned. One of the realtors was apparently setting up a meeting with him regarding a property purchase. That revelation blindsided Cassandra. They already owned a house, and they had never discussed buying a second property. Why would he be seeking a luxury condominium behind her back? As they left, Valerie squeezed Cassandra's hand. "Something's definitely going on," she murmured. "We just don't know how dark it is yet." Over the following days, Cassandra's anxiety grew like a vine, wrapping itself around every waking thought. Was Thomas truly intending to move out? Or was he planning to set up a secret home for someone else? Unable to focus on anything else, she took a temporary leave from her volunteering at the library. She found it impossible to concentrate on shelving books or hosting reading groups when her entire future felt precariously balanced on a lie. Thomas, unaware of her discoveries, continued his routine as if nothing had changed. Late nights, cryptic phone calls, and that disturbingly pleasant mood that seemed to bloom out of nowhere, particularly on certain afternoons. Cassandra decided it was time to orchestrate a direct confrontation, but only after she collected definitive proof. During one of his absences, Cassandra rummaged through the drawers in their shared home office. Her fingers trembled when she discovered documents in a hidden folder at the bottom of a filing cabinet. There, under old receipts and warranty papers, were property brochures for that condominium near Riverside Park. As she skimmed through the glossy pages, a photograph slipped out. It was an ultrasound, a fetal image that wasn't hers. Her blood chilled. The mother's name on the ultrasound read Irene Hendricks, and the date was only 4 weeks prior. The photograph clearly depicted a pregnancy near its second trimester. Cassandra's mind whirled with questions. Who was Irene? Why did Thomas have her ultrasound? With trembling hands, she carefully replaced the items, trying not to disturb anything that might tip off Thomas. She felt nauseous, the gravity of the situation overwhelming her. Someone else was pregnant, and Thomas possessed the evidence. Had he fathered another child? Her unborn baby kicked at that moment, as if sharing her alarm. Cassandra realized she was on the brink of uncovering a betrayal so profound it could tear her entire world apart. Despite the heartbreak swirling through her, Cassandra forced herself into a meticulous calm. She needed to glean every detail before her emotions erupted into confrontation. That night, she set her phone to record audio and discreetly placed it inside Thomas's car. It was a desperate move, but she reasoned she had to know the content of those phone calls he took on his drive to and from work or wherever else he was going. The next day, once Thomas left, she waited for an hour, then carefully retrieved the phone before heading home to listen. Her heart pounded as she pressed play. Much of it was mundane chatter business calls, a conversation about scheduling some repairs for a client. Then, amid the static and engine hum, she heard a soft voice, a female voice. She couldn't make out everything, but her husband's chuckle resounded, rich and affectionate. "What do you think of the name Sarah?" Thomas asked at one point. "I wanted to match the name Cassandra, and I picked out for our baby boy, Samuel. It would be sweet if they're close, like siblings in spirit." Cassandra nearly dropped the phone. He was discussing a name for another baby, a girl named Sarah, intending for it to be somehow aligned with their own child's name. The mind-numbing betrayal surged like a tidal wave, flooding her senses. But there was something off about his tone, as though he was trying to convince this woman to agree to a plan. Tears blurred Cassandra's vision. The agony of her husband, naming someone else's baby in parallel to theirs, was almost too much to bear. Fear, rage, and an inexplicable sense of dread consumed her. Yet, an instinct told her that even this might not be the complete story. There could be deeper currents hidden beneath this act of infidelity, currents she was determined to uncover. Cassandra's turbulent emotions made it nearly impossible to sleep that night. She stared at the ceiling, replaying Thomas's words from the recording in her mind. It would be sweet if they're close, like siblings in spirit. What twisted logic would drive him to give matching names to two babies from different mothers? She tossed and turned, one hand protectively over her belly. Her child deserved better than this spiral of deceit. Morning arrived without providing the solace she needed. Determined not to let the shock paralyze her, Cassandra contacted Valerie once more. They agreed to meet at a local café, Le Petit Soleil, a charming place that served warm, flaky croissants. Valerie arrived, eyes sharp, ready to delve into the next step of their investigation. Cassandra outlined everything: the stakeouts, the ultrasound, the phone recording. Valerie's eyebrows rose in alarm. "He wants to name that baby girl Sarah?" she echoed, her voice filled with dismay. "And your baby boy will be Samuel? That's unbelievable." The two devised a plan. Valerie would keep digging through her journalistic network, seeking out any mention of Irene Hendricks in the public domain, social media, property listings, or any personal records. Meanwhile, Cassandra would confront Thomas in a way that might catch him off guard, forcing him to reveal the truth. Their biggest fear was that if he sensed suspicion, he'd hide the evidence or vanish altogether. As they finished their meeting and headed to their cars, Cassandra placed a hand on her abdomen, feeling the baby shift. Anxiety coursed through her, but she steeled herself. She thought about the new life forming inside her, a life she wanted to protect from betrayal and heartbreak. If Thomas had chosen this path, there would be consequences. And by the end of it all, someone would be forced to face karmic retribution for these tangled deceptions. Late that evening, Cassandra waited until Thomas had retreated to the shower. She quietly slipped into their bedroom, phone in hand, and dialed the number she'd seen listed on the ultrasound, an obstetric clinic affiliated with Mount Sinai Hospital. Her stomach churned as she feigned ignorance, claiming to be Irene's sister checking on an appointment. The receptionist hesitated, citing privacy restrictions, but eventually confirmed that Irene Hendricks was scheduled for her next prenatal checkup on Tuesday afternoon. Cassandra's heart lurched. If Thomas was truly the father, he might attend that appointment with Irene. It was the golden opportunity to catch them both together. She jotted down the details, then hung up with shaky hands. The following days felt like walking on shards of glass. Thomas continued his facade of normalcy, kisses on her cheek, polite inquiries about her health, mentions of an upcoming business trip. Every gesture felt like an insult, an act of hypocrisy. Cassandra kept her composure, though she was boiling with anger beneath the surface. When Tuesday arrived, Cassandra dropped by the obstetric clinic an hour early, disguised in a baggy sweatshirt and oversized sunglasses. She tried to quell the roiling tension in her stomach as she stood near the entrance, waiting. Just as her legs started to ache from standing so long, she saw Irene. She recognized her from a photo Valerie had managed to find on a social media page set to nearly private. The woman's belly, though smaller than Cassandra's, was definitely a pregnancy bump. Not 2 minutes later, Thomas slipped through the doorway. He was wearing casual clothes, the type he never wore to the office, and immediately greeted Irene with a gentle hand on her waist. Cassandra's breath caught in her throat. The final confirmation was right before her eyes. Now, she had to decide whether to reveal herself or let him condemn himself further. Mustering courage she never knew she had, Cassandra followed the two into the clinic's waiting area, staying a careful distance behind them. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, illuminating the anxious faces of expectant mothers and accompanying partners. Irene and Thomas found seats in a corner, whispering to each other in hushed tones. Cassandra positioned herself behind a potted fern, her heart thundering like a drum. Suddenly, a nurse called out, "Irene Hendricks!" Thomas stood immediately, helping Irene to her feet. They disappeared into the examination room. Cassandra felt a swell of nausea in her throat. It wasn't just that her husband was with another pregnant woman, it was the ease with which he performed these comforting gestures he'd once reserved for her. Barely 10 minutes later, Thomas reappeared, heading for a water fountain near the hallway. Summoning every ounce of courage, Cassandra slid out of her hiding spot. As soon as their eyes met, his jaw dropped, color draining from his face. For a moment, silence reigned. It was as though the entire clinic froze, the bustle of the waiting area collapsing into a singular, heart-stopping moment. "Cassandra," he stammered, glancing around as if searching for an escape route. What are you doing here?" She could feel the rage surging beneath her composure. "I might ask you the same thing," she hissed, voice trembling with betrayal. "You told me you had a meeting at work today." Thomas's face contorted, struggling to maintain composure. I can explain," he said, though even he seemed uncertain what explanation could suffice. Before Cassandra could hurl the accusations that burned in her throat, Irene appeared behind Thomas, rubbing her belly. Confusion clouded her features as she took in Cassandra's pregnant form. In that mirrored moment, two pregnant women facing each other, Cassandra realized there was no turning back from the storm that was about to unfold. Cassandra's pulse pounded as Irene peered at her with apprehension, hand protectively resting on her belly. Thomas stood in the middle, looking as though he wished he could vanish into thin air. Furious tears pricked at Cassandra's eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of him. She felt an almost feral need to maintain composure, to show neither mercy nor weakness. "Thomas," she said slowly, her voice dangerously calm, "introduce us." He swallowed hard, the guilt etched into every line of his face. "Cassandra, this is Irene," he managed, voice strained. "Irene, this is my wife." A pregnant pause dragged through the corridor. Irene's eyes widened, her cheeks turning ashen. "Wife," she echoed, staring at Thomas in disbelief. "You told me you were going through a divorce. You said you'd already left her. Is that not?" Her voice trailed off, leaving the damning question hanging. Cassandra wanted to speak, to scream, but she was too stunned to form words. The revelation that Thomas had lied to Irene as well caused a dizzying swirl of emotions, anger, heartbreak, and a perverse hint of empathy for this other woman who also seemed deceived. Thomas rushed to quell the chaos, lowering his voice as if trying not to attract attention from the busy corridor. "I told you I was in the process," he insisted, eyes darting from one woman to the other. "It's complicated. Cassandra and we've been having problems." Cassandra let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Problems? Are you referring to our first baby, the one I'm carrying right now? And the fact that you're naming Irene's baby Sarah to match the name we picked for our son?" She spat the words, feeling her fists clench. Irene's expression shifted to raw devastation. Thomas clearly hadn't informed her of that twisted plan either. With everything laid bare, Cassandra turned away, tears finally breaching her defenses. She needed to leave before her trembling legs gave out beneath her. The time for confrontation would come, but this moment was too raw, too agonizing to bear. In the aftermath of that explosive encounter, Cassandra found herself retreating to Valerie's apartment for solace. She needed distance from Thomas, from the home they once cherished, from the echoes of betrayal in every room. Valerie welcomed her with open arms, quickly ushering her onto the couch and offering a warm blanket. Cassandra could only stare at the blank television screen, replaying the horrifying scene at the clinic again and again in her mind. Finally, she managed to speak through chattering lips, her breath ragged from sobs. "He told her he was divorcing me. He's naming their baby after ours. How could he spin so many lies at once?" Valerie rested a comforting hand on Cassandra's shoulder. "You're safe here," she murmured. "Focus on you and your baby. He'll face the consequences for his deception." Before Cassandra could reply, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She saw Thomas's name light up the screen. Loathing turned her stomach sour. She couldn't bring herself to answer. Moments later, a text arrived. "I'm sorry. Please let me explain." Cassandra wanted to fling the phone across the room, but instead, she read the text again, bitterness and sorrow flooding her heart. She typed a single reply, "No words can fix what you've done." The phone buzzed persistently for the next half hour, messages piling up, each more frantic than the last. Finally, there was a pause. Then, a single text arrived that froze her in place. "I'm at the condo near Riverside Park. Come if you want the truth. If you care about our future, please." Valerie frowned at the message. "He's baiting you," she warned. "He's probably terrified you'll divorce him and expose everything. Be careful." Cassandra exhaled, wiping away her tears. She knew she had to go. The truth was now her only salvation, no matter how excruciating it might be. Night fell like a shroud as Cassandra made her way to the Riverside Park condominium. She had expected the grandeur, glass walls, and perfectly manicured shrubbery, but never had it felt so oppressive. Stepping through the lobby felt like entering enemy territory. Her baby bump seemed heavier than ever, a physical weight tied to her emotional turmoil. Thomas met her in the corridor on the 10th floor, looking disheveled and apologetic. He gestured for her to follow him into Unit 1005. The space was sparsely furnished, eerily silent. An uneasy dread skittered down Cassandra's spine as she scanned the pristine surfaces and vacant shelves. Was he planning to move here with Irene? Without preamble, Thomas began to speak, voice quivering with desperation. "Cassandra, I never intended for this to happen. Please listen to me. I swear, there's more to this than you know." She folded her arms over her stomach. "That's an understatement," she snapped, her composure fraying. "You lied to me. You lied to Irene. You're a father-to-be with 2 different pregnant women. What could possibly be more complicated than that?" Thomas sighed, running a trembling hand through his hair. "I did lie, but not in the way you think. The baby Irene's carrying, it's not mine." He paused, allowing the bombshell to sink in. "I agreed to pretend to be her partner for reasons you can't imagine." "She's in trouble." Cassandra's skeptical glare only deepened. "Trouble? So you just decided you'd claim fatherhood? And what about buying a luxury condo? Is that just a side hobby?" He lowered his voice. "It's not for me, and it's not for her. Irene's trying to escape an abusive situation. I'm helping her hide until her child is born." The condo is under my name, so she can't be tracked. But it's not out of charity alone. Cassandra stood there, stunned, a swirl of confusion and suspicion warred with a faint spark of hope. Could this story be true, or was it just another manipulative ploy to save himself from condemnation? Thomas gestured toward the impeccably neat living room, indicating for Cassandra to sit. Though every muscle in her body tensed with distrust, she lowered herself onto a leather sofa, her eyes never leaving him. He leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly, as if steeling himself for a confession that had been weighing on him for far too long. "It started months ago," Thomas began, his voice hushed. "I met Irene at a charity function. She was the event organizer, and we got to talking. She confided in me that her ex-boyfriend was controlling, violent. She'd discovered she was pregnant, and the situation escalated. She feared for her life and her baby's safety." Cassandra swallowed hard. She knew from volunteering at the library that such stories were all too common, with victims often struggling to escape the cycle of abuse. Yet, she didn't let her anger subside. "So you just decided to become her knight in shining armor, risking our marriage in the process." Thomas shook his head. "I tried to help discreetly, connecting her to resources, renting this condo under my name so her ex couldn't trace her. But her ex is influential, with connections that make it dangerous for her. We realized if I posed as the baby's father, it might help deter suspicion. At least, that was the plan." Cassandra's tears threatened to overflow. "What about naming her baby Sarah? Or telling her you were divorcing me? You can't blame all that on trying to protect her. And what about those intimate touches? That moment at the clinic?" Thomas looked stricken. "I won't lie, lines got blurred. Irene was desperate, lonely. She clung to me and I tried to comfort her. The baby name, it was a lie. I was trying to calm her anxiety, to make her feel like we were united. I never thought you'd find out this way, Cassandra. I swear on our baby, I never slept with her." She didn't know whether to believe him. It all sounded so outlandish, yet certain details clicked. The only question was whether Thomas's betrayal went deeper than he claimed, or if a flicker of redemption still lingered in his intentions. Cassandra's mind spun with conflicting emotions, anger, betrayal, doubt, and a sliver of compassion for Irene if what Thomas said was true. Slowly she stood up, her gaze locked onto his. "If you wanted to help her, why couldn't you just tell me? Why lie about everything, especially naming the baby after ours?" Thomas's voice quivered with regret. "I was afraid you wouldn't understand. Irene insisted no one else could know, worried the information would leak. Her ex has resources. And I admit, I panicked. I thought if you knew, you'd demand I stop. I couldn't bear the idea of leaving her defenseless." The tears Cassandra had been holding at bay finally spilled onto her cheeks. She pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling her own child's subtle movements. "I can't believe you'd do this to me. To us. You were so convinced that I wouldn't understand. You know I'd never want someone else to be hurt." He reached out, tentatively brushing her arm. "I made a terrible mistake. In trying to save Irene, I betrayed you." The baby name was a horrible attempt to keep her calm. Her ex had threatened to kill any child she bore that wasn't his. "I told Irene if we used a name similar to the one you and I picked, it would seal the illusion that I intended to start a family with her." Cassandra inhaled sharply. The entire concept was revolting, and yet she sensed a bizarre logic behind it, a desperate ruse. She wavered, feeling the floor tilt beneath her. She detested the deception, but if Irene truly was in danger, Thomas's misguided loyalty might have a shred of noble intention. Still, the damage felt irreparable. Could she ever forgive him for choosing secrecy over trust, for letting her believe he'd been unfaithful? Torn between fury and pity, Cassandra realized that the only way forward was to confront Irene herself, to see the truth in her eyes and decide what to believe. 2 days passed before Cassandra could muster the resolve to contact Irene. Memories of the painful scene at the clinic haunted her, yet curiosity and the faint hope of clarity spurred her onward. She obtained Irene's number from Thomas, an awkward conversation in itself, then arranged to meet at a small coffee shop on the outskirts of town. The moment Cassandra entered, she spotted Irene in a far corner, nursing a hot drink, her eyes swollen from tears. Even through Cassandra's own heartbreak, she could recognize the raw fear etched into the woman's face. Steeling herself, she approached the table, taking a seat across from her unexpected rival, if that was even the right word for it now. "I'm not here to attack you," Cassandra began softly, though her tone trembled. "I just want the truth." Irene nodded, twisting her napkin anxiously. "I can't imagine how you must feel," she whispered. "I only found out 2 days ago that Thomas was married and that you existed. I swear, I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought he was separated." Cassandra tried to steady the whirling storm inside her. "He told me you're in danger, that your ex is looking for you." A flicker of panic crossed Irene's face. "Yes. Andrew, that's his name. He's a powerful man. He's threatened me multiple times. He claims he'll find me wherever I go and destroy my life if I don't let him claim this baby as his." Tears welled in her eyes. "Thomas offered a lifeline. He said if it appeared as though the baby had another father, someone stable, who could support me, Andrew might give up." The coffee shop felt stifling. Cassandra's moral compass battled her anger. Irene appeared genuinely frightened, her voice quivering with real terror. But she had her own grievances to address. "Did you ever love Thomas? Or did anything happen between you two?" Irene's cheeks flushed with shame. "I was lonely. He comforted me. We kissed once. He said it was a mistake. Beyond that, he never led me on. He insisted it was all an act for my protection." Cassandra stared into her cup, uncertain if she could forgive any part of this. But she recognized a tragic complexity here. The woman in front of her might be both a victim and an unwitting accomplice to Thomas's lies. It offered no easy resolution, only a deeper labyrinth of emotional conflict. Later that evening, after her meeting with Irene, Cassandra trudged through her front door, body exhausted, mind tangled in knots. Despite the complexities revealed, she felt no immediate comfort, only a delicate sense that the truth was more nuanced than she could have imagined. Thomas sat on the couch, eyes haunted by remorse. In his hands was a file of documents. "I want you to see this," he said quietly. "It's everything about Andrew. Police reports, restraining orders, legal attempts Irene has made to keep him away. None of it worked. He always found her." Cassandra hesitated, then lowered herself onto the armchair across from him. The baby shifted inside her, reminding her to remain calm. She flipped through the file, each page painting a harrowing tale of psychological torment, threats, and physical violence. Irene's pleas for help, the blank stares of legal hurdles, the repeated cycle of relocation, none had brought her lasting safety. "If everything in here is true, she does need help," Cassandra whispered, her throat tight. "But why involve you? Why not someone else?" Thomas exhaled a heavy breath. "She met me at a fundraiser for domestic violence awareness. She recognized my face from a local news segment on philanthropic corporate projects. She was terrified and confided in me. When I realized how deep her situation was, I couldn't just walk away." Cassandra slammed the file shut, a spark of anger returning. "You could have told me." Her voice quivered. "I'm your wife, Thomas. I might have been willing to help. Instead, you made me think you were cheating, naming your mistress's baby after ours. For God's sake," he flinched at the word mistress. "I know, I betrayed you. There's no excuse. All I can say is that I panicked. I was afraid for Irene's life, and I was afraid of losing you if you misunderstood. So I went to extreme lengths. I'm sorry." Cassandra pressed a trembling hand to her abdomen. Betrayal, empathy, love, and wrath tumbled within her like a raging tempest. The question now loomed: could she salvage the pieces of her marriage after such a grave deception? And what price would Thomas pay for his misguided heroism? Over the next few weeks, Cassandra battled a whirlwind of decisions. She moved temporarily to Valerie's apartment while navigating doctor's visits and prenatal classes. Thomas called daily, leaving messages of apology and desperation. Sometimes she picked up, other times she simply let the phone ring, tears burning her eyes as she heard his voice on the voicemail. Ironically, the closer she looked into Irene's predicament, the more Cassandra understood Thomas's initial impulse to protect her. Meanwhile, Irene, showing earnest remorse and gratitude, reached out to Cassandra for emotional support. She confided that Andrew had indeed been combing the city for any sign of her. A private investigator was spotted near the condominium building, forcing her to stay indoors most days. As complicated as everything was, Cassandra felt her heartbreak slowly shift into an odd sense of responsibility. She couldn't just abandon Irene to a dangerous fate, yet she also struggled to forgive Thomas for the betrayal of trust. The tension of these dual loyalties weighed heavily on her, especially with her own baby due in just a couple of months. Valerie, ever the voice of reason, advised, "If you choose to help, do it for Irene's sake, not Thomas's. But keep your boundaries clear. He has to make amends to you in his own time. Don't let pity overshadow your needs." In quiet moments, Cassandra wrestled with the possibility of divorce. Her entire future hung in the balance. Could she raise Samuel in a household permeated by mistrust? Yet a piece of her still remembered the gentle man she'd once loved, the man who'd been so attentive when she first learned she was pregnant. That memory haunted her, whispering that redemption might still be possible if he truly changed. But life had more twists in store, dark secrets about Andrew, unexpected legal complications, and a karmic ripple that would force each participant in this tangled drama to confront the consequences of their actions. As time marched on, Andrew's looming presence became disturbingly real. Irene confided that she had spotted an all-too-familiar black sedan tailing her when she tried to sneak out to buy groceries. The condo, once a secret sanctuary, felt less safe by the day. In desperation, Irene considered fleeing the city altogether. But Cassandra insisted they explore legal channels one more time, especially with new evidence in hand. In a surprising gesture, Cassandra accompanied Irene to meet with a detective who specialized in domestic violence cases. Detective Elaine Rogers had a reputation for tenacity and compassion. They arrived at the precinct with nerves twisted tight. Irene clutched a folder of documents, restraining orders, threatening texts, medical records detailing bruises from past assaults. Detective Rogers listened intently, occasionally scribbling notes. "It seems Andrew Carter has used intimidation and a network of well-connected friends to scare Irene out of pursuing further legal action," she said, her tone resolute. "But you have enough evidence now to request stronger protective measures. Plus, with Cassandra as a witness to your predicament, this can bolster your case." Relief flickered across Irene's face, though fear lingered in her eyes. Cassandra felt a spark of hope. Perhaps this time they could corner Andrew legally, forcing him to back off for good. But the detective warned them, "Men like Andrew don't give up easily. You need to be extremely cautious. We can put an officer on watch near the condo." Grateful yet unsettled, Irene and Cassandra left the station arm in arm, a fragile alliance born from tragedy. Though doubts gnawed at Cassandra, she felt a renewed sense of determination. She was no saint, nor was she an avenger. But maybe, just maybe, she could help Irene escape this cycle, while forging a path forward for herself, regardless of whether Thomas would be part of that future. Meanwhile, Thomas's life took a dramatic turn of its own. Pressured by guilt and desperation to make amends, he threw himself into assisting with legal fees for Irene's case and scheduled therapy sessions for himself. Cassandra, upon hearing this from Valerie, was torn between relief and anger. At least he was trying to do some good, but she refused to let him wriggle out of the consequences of his deception. When they finally arranged a face-to-face meeting at Valerie's apartment, the air was thick with tension. Thomas sat at the small dining table, eyes lowered. Cassandra stood across from him, her belly visibly larger now, a quiet testament to the life growing inside her. "I'm not going to pretend everything is okay," Cassandra began, her voice wavering. "What you did broke my trust, possibly beyond repair. But if you're truly committed to making things right, not just with me, but with Irene, I'm willing to see it through." She paused, searching his face. "For now, though, I'm staying here. I don't know when or if I'll come back." He swallowed hard, nodding. "I understand. I'll do whatever you need me to do. Couples counseling, personal counseling, finances, anything. Just give me a chance to prove I can be the husband you deserve." Emotions churned within Cassandra: love, pain, exhaustion, and a glimmer of cautious hope. "I can't promise forgiveness," she said, tears pooling in her eyes, "but I won't close the door entirely." Thomas reached for her hand, hesitating before gently touching it. The baby kicked, a flicker of life that reminded them both of the consequences their actions would have on a new generation. "We'll take this day by day," Cassandra whispered. Deep in her heart, she knew the road ahead was fraught with challenges, not just for her marriage, but for Irene's safety, the unborn children, and the creeping threat of Andrew that loomed ever closer in the shadows. Irene's court hearing approached faster than anyone anticipated. Detective Rogers had filed an urgent request for a protective order against Andrew, supplying fresh evidence of harassment and threats. The day before the hearing, Cassandra, Valerie, and Thomas gathered at the condominium to support Irene. An air of unity, albeit strained, settled over them. That evening, as they huddled in the living room, discussing final preparations, a sudden pounding on the door startled everyone. Irene's face went white. "He found me," she whispered in horror. Heart pounding, Thomas motioned for them all to stay back. Slowly, he approached the door and peered through the peephole. "It's not Andrew," Thomas said, relief evident in his voice. But the next moment, the door burst open, having been forced by a burly man who brandished a gun. Cassandra screamed, and Valerie instinctively shielded Irene. Thomas was thrown back from the force of the door, landing hard on the floor. The intruder glared, chest heaving. "Where's Irene?" he snarled. "Mr. Carter wants a word." Before anyone could respond, the man spotted Irene cowering behind Valerie, his eyes narrowed in triumph. Cassandra's heart hammered against her ribcage. She stumbled backward, trying to protect her own stomach from any harm. Terror coursed through her veins. She could see the glint of the weapon in the intruder's hand. "Stay away from her," Thomas roared, struggling to stand, but the man aimed the gun, compelling him to freeze. Irene trembled, tears streaking her cheeks. In that split second, Cassandra realized they might not all make it out alive if this confrontation escalated. Instinct took over. She pressed the panic button on her phone, which she'd set up earlier in case Andrew's men ever discovered Irene. The siren-like shrill filled the condo, and the intruder, startled, took several steps back. For a moment, the tension hung in midair. Then chaos erupted. A shot rang out, echoing through the elegant condo walls. Cassandra dropped to the floor, arms cradling her abdomen, mind spinning with terror. She braced herself for pain, expecting the bullet to pierce flesh, but in the confusion she realized the shot had gone wide, hitting a light fixture overhead. Sparks rained down, plunging the hallway into a flickering half-darkness. Thomas lunged, tackling the intruder, hands grappling for the gun. Valerie seized the opportunity to pull Irene behind the couch, shielding her from harm. Cassandra crawled toward the nearest corner, adrenaline fueling her every movement. She could scarcely breathe, consumed by the primal instinct to protect her unborn child. The intruder was strong, though. He elbowed Thomas in the ribs, sending him sprawling. Just as he raised the gun once more, police sirens wailed outside. The front door burst open, this time yielding to uniformed officers alerted by Cassandra's panic button. In seconds, they subdued the gunman, disarming him and shouting directives. Irene sobbed hysterically, clutching her belly. Valerie guided her forward, tears in her own eyes. Cassandra pushed herself to her feet, shaking uncontrollably. She felt a wave of dizziness, then relief. She was alive. The baby was safe, at least physically. Amid the chaos of flashing lights and hurried paramedics, Detective Rogers arrived, calm yet urgent. The intruder was hauled away, spewing curses about Andrew's orders and vowing revenge. A pair of paramedics examined Cassandra and Irene, ensuring their vital signs were stable. In the aftermath, Thomas, battered and bruised, staggered to Cassandra's side. He reached out a trembling hand, eyes brimming with genuine concern. She allowed him to steady her, acknowledging that, for all his faults, he'd risked his life to protect them. "That was close," Detective Rogers muttered, shaking her head grimly. "Let's hope this ordeal puts Andrew away for good." But as Cassandra clung to Thomas's arm, she sensed a shift in the atmosphere, a potent, cathartic wave of justice and revelation that would soon ripple through all their lives, delivering a karmic end to Andrew's tyranny and setting a new course for their fractured relationships. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this roller coaster of heartbreak, revelations, and redemption. Our story underscores the devastating costs of deceit and the surprising alliances that arise when danger lurks in the shadows. Sometimes unexpected truths bind people in extraordinary ways, while well-meant lies can forge painful rifts. In the end, karmic forces ensure that actions, whether noble or deceptive, reap their inevitable consequences. We hope this tale of one husband's secrecy, two expectant mothers, and a terrifying villain kept you on the edge of your seat. If you found yourself swept up by this dramatic journey, please give this video a like, share it with friends, and subscribe for more riveting stories ahead.